I also want to explain the pathway of becoming a solicitor in detail. So basically, first you need to qualify the solicitor qualifying exams. Well, it is very doable even if you have a Pakistani law degree. As I mentioned previously, I am pretty confident that after I complete this course, it will help me achieve my long-term plan. And as I said, that one needs to be clear that what their long-term plan is. Hello everyone, my name is Syed Mohammad Hussein Abbas Kazmi. I am a Pakistani qualified advocate enrolled with the Sindh Bar Council. Currently, I am based in London pursuing LLM in legal practice along with the Solicitor Qualifying Exam preparation course at the University of Law, London Bloomsbury campus. I have previously worked at a Legal 500 listed Tier 1 law firm at Karachi at Liaquat Merchant Associates, and more recently, I worked at Armstrong and Co Solicitors, that is in London. So today I've been given this opportunity of sharing my SQE journey with you guys. Before I do that, I would like to thank Ms. Hania Zahra Shah for her great work that she is doing, providing guidance towards fresh law graduates through her platform, the Legal Junction. It is really helpful and really sets a guiding path for a fresh graduate in the legal industry. Well, in order to answer this question, I would like to first explain the concept of solicitor, as I believe that this concept of solicitor is not very well known in Pakistan as compared to the concept of barrister or the concept of advocate. You see, in the England and Wales, in the UK, the legal system works in a different way. If someone has a legal issue, they can't just directly file their case in the court. They just have to consult a legal practitioner first, and then that legal practitioner will see whether their case merits to be filed in a court or whether it can be settled outside through additional dispute resolution means. So that legal practitioner and that legal person is known as a solicitor in the UK, in England and Wales. So basically, a person who is facing a legal issue, he first has to consult with a solicitor, and then the solicitor will advise him whether he needs to file a court case or whether his issue can be settled outside the court. So in order to become a solicitor, what previously used to happen was that you needed a proper degree qualification that was called legal practice course, and a person who wanted to become a solicitor, he needed to complete that legal practice course in order to start the pathway of becoming the solicitor. But now it has been changed. Now what has happened is that the Solicitor Regulation Authority, that is basically the authority which governs the regulation regarding to solicitors. So what they have done is they have introduced this new line of exams known as the SQE, or the Solicitor Qualifying Exams. What they do is that if a person who does not belong to a legal academic background, what that means is that if a person who has not done LLB, for example, what they can do is that they can just simply see whether their education meets the requirement that is set by the Solicitor Regulation Authority, SRA. And if they, and that is minimal, I believe that is just that they should have a bachelor degree. If they have a bachelor's degree, then they are eligible to sit for these solicitor qualifying exams. And what has happened is that these new centralized exams, the SQE, they have actually made this path of becoming solicitor more accessible towards people. So these are exams that need to be cleared in order to become a solicitor. For the sake of example, I would say that these are licensing exams, just like the law GAT exam that we have in Pakistan, that if a person wants to become an advocate of the courts of Pakistan, they need to clear that law GAT exam. So if a person wants to become a practicing solicitor in the England and Wales, they need to clear this solicitor qualifying exam. The structure of the studies has also been changed with the introduction of this new SQE exam. Previously, it was a full-fledged master's equivalent degree known as the LPC, the legal practice course. It had its own separate modules which need to be cleared, and the exams were for each separate module. But now in the SQE, what has happened is that it has been divided into two parts, SQE1 and SQE2. And SQE1 is basically not MCQ, it's called single best answer questions. So basically, it's a multiple choice question wherein all answers seem to be appropriate, but only there is a one best answer. So that is the structure of the SQE1 exam. It has multiple choice questions where a person has to choose the best appropriate answers. And it contains around 15 modules, which you can look up on the SR website. It has contract law, criminal law, legal practice, and all the relevant modules needed to be known for a person who wants to become an aspiring solicitor. That is the structure of SQE1. And SQE2 is basically more of a practical exam. It consists of practical modules where a person's advocacy skills, his interview taking skills, and his research skills are tested. And to answer why it has become relevant for Pakistani graduate, well, it is very interesting. You see, I have noticed this. In fact, I have realized that there is a fact that many of the Pakistani consultants, I would say, or the people who guide students on whether what route they should choose for their future studies, what they do is they do not tell students that there is actually very beneficial thing for Pakistani law graduates if they take up this solicitor qualifying examination route, which is that if they have a certain amount of experience, that is experience working as a Pakistani advocate, Pakistani licensed advocate, then they are eligible for exemption in the solicitor qualifying exams. That is huge. You see, I'll explain this a bit more in the further questions, in the next questions. This is a huge step for a person who wants to who is an aspiring solicitor, who wants to qualify as a solicitor in England and Wales, because it will get you the major part of exam, that is SQE2 exempted, if you have the relevant prerequisite experience. That is why it is very relevant, I would say, for Pakistani students, because it provides an opportunity for them to cash the time that they spend working in Pakistan into becoming a licensed solicitor in England and Wales. I also want to explain the pathway of becoming a solicitor in detail. So basically, first you need to qualify the solicitor qualifying exams, SQE Part 1, SQE Part 2. Then, as as it happens in Pakistan, or I believe this happens in every jurisdiction, that if you want to become a licensed practitioner of that legal jurisdiction, you first need to clear the licensing exam, and then you need to acquire some amount of experience working in a senior under a senior legal practitioner of that jurisdiction. The same thing happens in the UK. If you want to become a qualified practicing UK solicitor, then you need to qualify the SQE exams, Part 1 and Part 2, and after that, you need to have qualifying work experience of 2 years. And that qualifying work experience can be achieved by working as a trainee solicitor or by working as a paralegal in a UK licensed law firm. Or if your relevant experience working in the legal industry is approved by a UK licensed solicitor, then that experience also qualifies as a qualifying work experience in terms of the requirements set by the Solicitor Regulation Authority. And I have seen this in some of the firms from other jurisdictions as well. What they do is that they have basically provided access to UK centric rules towards people that are based in other jurisdiction. I'll explain this. For example, there's this firm in Pakistan, Spencer and West. What they do is they hire candidates in Pakistan for relevant roles, or basically supporting roles that are relevant in the UK. And those candidates in Pakistan, they work online and they support solicitors who are working in the UK. And by doing that, so in my opinion, you are gaining the qualifying work experience. You just need to make record of that experience, and you need to get that experience approved from a UK qualified solicitor. So talking about how this degree is different or perhaps similar than a master's, you see, a master's is a proper academic full-fledged degree. There needs to be certain credit that need to be completed in order to qualify as a master's of a certain discipline. For example, in our industry, it is known as Master of Laws, the LLM. An LLM is an academic qualification. it basically allows you to study further into the concepts related to your study. And what SQE is, as I said before, the SQE or the Solicitor Qualifying Examination are the licensing exam needed to be passed, needed to be cleared in order to become a licensed practicing solicitor in the England and Wales. As I said before, it is similar to the law GAT exam or even the bar exam that is required to become in order to become a barrister. So this is just a licensing exam, the SQE. So what has happened now is that many of the institute, including such as mine, the University of Law, what they do is that they provide master courses which are structured in a way that the syllabus of the solicitor qualifying exams is incorporated into the syllabus of the master's program. So for example, I'll explain you about the master's that I am doing. I am doing LLM in legal practice along with the SQE prep course. So the way that it is structured is that it is divided into three parts. The part 1 and part 2 of masters is just similar, same to same as the syllabus and the parts of SQE part 1 and SQE part 2. And then what they have done is that in order to meet the requirement of 180 credits, I need to take additional modules in my third part of the course, and then I'll be awarded a master's degree. And that master's degree will allow me to file a allow me to apply a graduate visa, and also will allow me to have an academic qualification on my CV. Along with that, it will allow me to have preparation for these exams. So it's basically a two-in-one course. It gives you a master's degree, and it also prepares you for the SQE exams. And let me just emphasize on this point that these SQE exams, these are separate from the master's exams. All the exams that are required or that are taken during your master's studies are completely different by the SQE. They are completely different than the solicitor qualifying exams. Solicitor qualifying exams are separate exams taken by the Solicitor Regulation Authority. You need to get yourself registered in the SRA, and they will allot you a date where you will have to go and take these exams. So these exams are separate from the exams that you need for your studies of masters. And if you do your masters, you can work in a legal industry. You can work as an in-house lawyer. You can work in corporate law. But if you want to practice as a solicitor in the England and Wales in UK, you need to qualify the solicitor qualifying exams. Well, it is very doable even if you have a Pakistani law degree. As I mentioned previously, you see, with the introduction of this new pathway of becoming a solicitor, that is the solicitor qualifying exams, it has actually made more accessible, or in fact made it easier for people who do not belong to legal backgrounds. And if a person who does not belong, who even does not belong to a legal background, if they are eligible to sit for these exams, then a person who has done LLB from Pakistan, or let's say some other jurisdiction, they are certainly very eligible to sit for these exams. But what they just need to check is that whether their course or their degree meets the requirement that is set by the Solicitor Regulation Authority. And as I said before, it is available online. You can do your research. And on the top of my mind right now, I can only remember that you need to have a proper level 6 bachelor's degree. So let's say if you have a degree in arts, and if it is equivalent to the UK level 6 degree, then you can just simply enroll yourself with the Solicitor Regulation Authority, and you can sit for these exams. And you do not certainly need LLB from the University of London in order to sit for these exams. So I'll first explain the structure of the solicitor qualifying exams in a bit detail in this answer. So basically, as I explained previously, SQE is of two parts, SQE1 and SQE2. So the SQE1 is a basically multiple choice question or a single best answer question structured paper. It consists of two exams, FLK1 and FLK2, that is Functioning Legal Knowledge 1 and Functioning Legal Knowledge 2. And these are basically divided across 15 modules. You can check the complete list of modules online. I'll just name a few: contract law, tort law, criminal practice, property law, property practice, land law, constitutional law, and the relevant laws required in the legal studies of the UK. So your knowledge, your functioning legal knowledge of all these different practice areas, 15 practice areas, is tested in the SQE part 1. And then your practical skills, your advocacy, your ability to understand what the client is, what issue the client is having, or your ability to take an interview of the client, or your ability to deal a situation of a person who is having a problem. Because in our line of work we have to face people who are under immense pressure, or who are facing extreme difficulties, and in on urgent basis. So we have to be mentally prepared, and we need that skill to deal with those kind of situations. So these practical skills are tested in the SQE2 part of the exam. And in my opinion, you need a lot of studies. You need a lot. You need to take. You need to invest a lot of time into studies of these exams. The Solicitor Regulation Authority itself suggests that you need at least 9 months of preparation before you sit in for the SQE1 exam. Because, as I said before, it is a very, very, very extremely difficult exams. The structure is like that. It is a single best answer question. All the options that will be given to you as the answer would seem to be correct, but you need to choose the most appropriate or the best answer considering the situation, or the facts of the question. I'll also explain the structure of the question. You see, you will have around 5 hours and 12 minutes in order to do the whole FLK exam, FLK1 and FLK2, two exams. And these two exams of 5 hours and 12 minutes would be divided into two sections. So basically, the whole exam, FLK1 exam, has around 180 questions. And in the first half, you will sit for 90 questions, then you will have a 1 hour break, and in the second half, you will sit for the other 90 questions. And same is like for the FLK2 exams. But as I said, that the total time that is allowed for these exams is 5 hours 12 minutes, and that is around 2 hours and 33 minutes for 90 questions. That what that means is that you need to spend 1 minute and 40 seconds on a single question. I'll explain this because it is not easy to understand this, that in 1 minute 40 seconds you need to read the facts of the question, you need to read and understand the answer options, and you need to analyze the facts and the answers together, and then you also need to apply your legal knowledge, and then you also have to choose in that 1 minute and 40 seconds. You see, you need this is a very demanding exam, so everything should be on the top of your mind at the whole time. And you need to be very well prepared before you go in for these exams, because the cost of the exam is a lot, and of course it has a lot of mental pressure. I also want to explain a little bit the options that are available to aspiring candidates. Firstly is that you can opt for these exams and the preparation of just the solicitor qualifying exams separately. You do not need to go for a master's, or you do not need to go for a master's that contains both master's and the SQE prep. You can just simply register yourself, or you can just simply get yourself enrolled in the solicitor qualifying exam preparation courses. And these are smaller courses, smaller in comparison to the whole full-fledged 1 year master's. And there are a lot of institutes which provide these courses. To name a few, I would say Barbary, Barbri, and then QLTS, and even University of Law, my university. They provide these specific SQE prep courses that are only prep courses relevant to the solicitor qualifying exams. And then the second option available to an aspiring candidate is that they can choose a master's course which has the syllabus of solicitor qualifying exams incorporated into the structure of that master course. And many of the universities provide such master courses. And as I mentioned before, the course that I am doing is also the same that I'm talking about. I am doing masters, and simultaneously I'm also preparing for the solicitor qualifying exams, and this preparation is provided to me by the University of Law. And also BPP also does this. They provide a masters which has the syllabus of these SQE exams incorporated into the structure of the masters. So these are the options that an aspiring solicitor should consider while making this choice. So talking about the cost, I'll just simply say this in the start: it will be expensive. If you want to do a degree in the UK, being personally in the UK, it will cost you a lot, because even if you consider the exchange rate nowadays, it is around, I believe, 390 Pakistani rupees are equivalent to one Great Britain pound. So you see, if you want to do a course in the UK, you will first, as explained this before, you will first need to think of the tuition fee that would be around on average 50. Well, I don't want to quote on this, but it would be more than around on average £15,000 per year, even if you consider a cheaper institute, but it will be above the 15,000 mark annually, and that is as a tuition fee. And then you'll also need to consider about the living cost, the cost of living in the UK. The UK visa immigration suggests that the cost of living in London for whole year for a student is on average £14,000. So you see, £14,000 is the cost of living, and around the same amount is the tuition fee. So, and on top of that, you'll also need to consider the exam fees and also the travel expenses, and even you might also need to buy some extra other resources in order to prep for these courses. So you will be looking towards amount upward around £30,000 if you want to do your course in the UK. But on the other hand, if you want to do your course online, although although in Pakistan the SRA does not conduct its exam right now, but the nearest place where these exams can be taken is Dubai, I believe. Then you can just simply travel to Dubai. You can just simply register yourself first with the SRA, and then you can just go to Dubai and sit in for these exams. That will save a lot of cost for you. You will just have to pay the exam prep fee. As I said, Barbary provides that, and I believe it is around £8,000. I'm not too sure. Just you'll have to do your research on this on your own. I'm just talking about the figures that I remember from back then when I was making this decision. So you can choose Barbary, you can choose QLTS, and you will just have to pay for the prep courses and the exam fee. So you will save a lot of money if you don't want to come to the UK personally in order to give these exams. So yeah, being in the UK does not automatically give you an edge. As I mentioned before, that nowadays there are some firms who are operating in a way that what they do is that they hire candidates in Pakistan for roles or job titles that are relevant in the UK. For example, what they do is that they'll hire a paralegal in Pakistan who will work online according to the UK timing, but he will assist a solicitor who is based in the UK. Well, this is also something that I want to talk about in detail. You see, as an international student, you will have disadvantage, because you see, this course, the solicitor qualifying exam course, is I would say not specifically but more appropriate for the UK legal system or the UK legal industry, and your peers will be mostly the UK nationals. And having said that, one of the most important disadvantage, or one of the most recurring disadvantage that an international student faces, is the uncertainty in the visa policies and the UK visa and immigration department's sentiment towards international student. You see, if you are an international student, And as I said this before, that when you make this choice of leaving your country and taking studies in a foreign country, then you think for a long term plan, and you set yourself for a long term route. But given the uncertainty of the UK visa immigration policies, you cannot stick to your long term plan, and that will make you discouraged, because if you plan to stay in the UK and you are unable due to some visa policy, then that will dishearten you, and you will feel like that you might have lost the whole cost of you doing your degree. So that is one of the disadvantage that international students face. Another disadvantage that I said was that if someone wants to work in the UK industry or in any other industry, then what the employer looks for is the relevant jurisdictional experience. And if you are an international student, you will not have the relevant jurisdictional experience, because you will be coming from a different jurisdiction. So you'll be competing with people or peers who have more experience and relevant experience than you. So getting a job, or basically the disadvantage that I want to say is that you will be stepping into a highly competitive market. That is a disadvantage of an international student if you want to choose the UK pathway as your study route. Well, I am pretty confident that after I complete this course, it will help me achieve my long-term plan. And as I said, that one needs to be cleared that what their long-term plan is. Then they should make a choice of the route that they want to choose for their future studies. As I mentioned this before, that previously I was working in a really good firm in Pakistan, and I thought that I should have a certification that would make me more recognizable in the Western legal industry in the UK. So that was my reason for choosing this specific program, and I believe after I complete this specific program, I will get that recognition in the UK. I don't want to, but then again, I don't want to disheart some people, because the edge or the advantage or the disadvantage actually, in fact, in my opinion, comes from the work that you put in. And as I mentioned this before, as I explained this before, you see, your long term goal should be clear. So if you want to practice, let's say if you want to practice in the UK, and you have researched this, and you realize that paralegal, or basically the role of the paralegal is widely considered in the UK, and you find some firm that does provide the paralegal roles in Pakistan, and you have worked as a paralegal, or you have relevant experience, even being in Pakistan as a distance learner, as a distant learner, then compared to the person who came to the UK, who spent time in the UK but did not find any work experience in the UK, then if you consider these two applicants from the employer's perspective, employer's point of view, the person who did this course through a distance learning program but has the relevant work experience, he did put in effort, then he'll be more, the employer would be obviously more attracted to give job to a person who has more relevant experience. So basically, all the advantage and all the disadvantage matters only on the work that you put in, and only on the path that you choose for yourself. If I could go back in time, I would still make the same choice, because as I mentioned, I am pretty confident about why I made this specific choice. This completing this specific course will indeed, in fact, help me gain the international recognition that I wanted in first place. And after coming to the UK and seeing everything and experiencing everything at the ground level, I would say that this was the right choice that I made. So if you do your research, you will find opportunities of enhancing your profile and enhancing your suitability. And as I said before, the edge does not come from where you are. The edge comes from how much work or how much hard work you put in. Doing this solicitor qualifying examination course will not guarantee you a job. It is just a prerequisite licensing exam that needs to be cleared in order to become a practicing solicitor in the UK. This solicitor qualifying examination will not guarantee your job in the UK. This is just a licensing exam that you need to pass if you want to start the pathway of becoming a solicitor in the UK. So that was my take on this SQE Solicitor Qualifying Examination pathway journey. I hope you guys learned from this, and I hope I provided clarity in making a better choice for you guys. Thank you. God bless you.